Welcome back to the Den of Episodes. I'm Marlo Fox, and this is your cozy little corner of the internet. So grab your mug of coffee or tea, settle into your favorite comfy spot, and let's head back to the Highlands. Today's episode has just about everything you could ask for in a Monarch of the Glen story. We've got a baby on the way, a tree competition that somehow escalates into near warfare, a Shakespeare quote, a taxi driver who accidentally drinks a fortune in vintage wine, and most importantly, we finally reach a turning point in one of the most frustrating romantic storylines in Glen history. So settle in because there's quite a lot to unpack. Before we dive in, I'd like to let you know that this episode does include Archie's sister Lizzie. However, it's played by a different actress. And actually, I think I like this actress better than the original from season 1. So I'm all in, and I hope you are too. And also, I've been hearing from some of you that you're starting to watch the show, and that makes me super happy. The episode opens with Molly preparing to leave Glen to attend the birth of her first grandchild, except the grandchild appears to have other plans. As Molly is heading out, Duncan nearly has a head-on collision with a speeding taxi on the Glen Drive. Inside the taxi is Lizzie, and she appears to be in labor. Now here's what immediately struck me. Neither Molly nor Lizzie seemed to have known the other was coming. Molly was literally leaving to go see Lizzie while Lizzie was arriving at Glen to have the baby. Molly storms over to the taxi and scolds the driver for speeding. She snaps that this is a private drive, not Brands Hatch. Now, for those of us across the pond, Brands Hatch is one of England's most famous motor racing circuits and hosted the British Grand Prix for many years. Lizzie's contractions stop for the moment and everyone helps her inside. She explains that she wants her baby to be born at Glen Whatever has happened in Lizzie's life, Glen is still home. When things become uncertain, people often want to return to the place where they feel the safest. Meanwhile, down by the lock, construction is underway on the old boathouse. Archie has some sort of grand plan for the building, and Hector is surprisingly enthusiastic. We never actually learn what the plan is for the boathouse, though. Hector is busy showing a journalist, Campbell McCrory, around the estate and proudly explaining how they're creating a place for everyone to enjoy. I always like seeing Hector get excited about these projects. Sometimes he fights Archie every step of the way, and at other times he's a cheerleader. This week he's a cheerleader. Nearby, Archie invites Fergal and Katrina for supper for a proper farewell before they leave for New Zealand. Fergal agrees happily, but unfortunately every mention of New Zealand feels like a little knife twist where Archie and Katrina are concerned. Neither one of them is saying what they feel. Neither one wants to risk rejection. And every episode that passes makes me want to shake both of them. At the village school, Katrina tells her students she won't be returning next year. The children are disappointed, and if you watch Katrina carefully, she doesn't seem entirely convinced she's making the right decision either. Meanwhile, Maureen asks the question everybody has been thinking. What about Archie? Katrina says Fergal told him she was leaving and she doesn't think Archie particularly cares. Oh, Katrina, dear, have you not been watching this season? Because from where I'm sitting, Archie looks like a man who spent months trying desperately not to say what's in his heart. These two are absolutely infuriating. Sweet, but infuriating. If stubbornness were an Olympic event, Archie and Katrina would both leave with gold medals. While romance is floundering, another competition is taking shape. A journalist has arrived to cover the Woodland Trust competition. The goal is to find the tallest tree in Scotland. There is publicity and prize money to win. Naturally, Archie's interested, and so is Kilwillie. And naturally, this turns into absolute nonsense. The Glen team proudly shows off their giant tree. Kilwillie immediately scoffs and takes everyone to his estate where we discover another very large tree. Hector dismisses it as a mere sapling. The rivalry begins immediately. Kilwillie hires a new employee named William to measure his tree, and because this is Monarch of the Glen, the arrival of a mysterious new employee should probably make us all suspicious. Nothing good ever comes from these people. Back at Glenbogle, Hector discovers a taxi parked outside and immediately jumps to a completely incorrect conclusion. In Hector's mind, the man who drove Lizzie to Glenbogle must also be the father of her child. Naturally, nobody corrects him right away, and so begins one of the funniest misunderstandings of the season. Upstairs, Archie is helping Lizzie unpack when she casually explains that Sean is simply her taxi driver. Unfortunately, Hector has already built an entire story in his head. Downstairs, he decides to play the role of gracious future father-in-law. And this is where things get expensive. Hector opens a bottle of Chateau La Touche 1964. Now, I'm no wine expert, but judging by Hector's attitude, this bottle's worth a small fortune. Sean, meanwhile, has absolutely no idea what he's drinking and gulps it down like water. The poor man is just enjoying a free drink, while Hector watches approvingly. Then Sean mentions his wife and his 3 bairns. Bairn, in Scotland, is a child. You can actually see Hector's brain grinding its gears. Then Sean asks about the 173 quid he's owed for driving Lizzie all the way from Glasgow. At that exact moment, Archie walks in and finally clears everything up. The look on Hector's face is priceless, and before Sean can take another sip, Hector reaches over and snatches the wine glass out of his hand. A man has his limits. Even Highland hospitality has its limits. Before dinner, Katrina and Fergal come up with a code phrase in case they need to escape an awkward situation. Their chosen phrase, kiwi fruit, which feels very appropriate given the New Zealand connection. The guests gather, gifts are exchanged, and Archie presents Fergal with a compass for his travels. It's a thoughtful gesture. Unfortunately, the pleasant mood doesn't last. Hector begins questioning Lizzie about the baby's father. At first it seems like concern, then it becomes interrogation. When Lizzie reveals that David has returned to his wife, Hector loses his temper. He tells her she's always been irresponsible. Lizzie fires back that Hector has been a terrible father, and suddenly years of hurt come pouring out from both sides. What makes this scene so painful is that neither person is entirely right and neither person is entirely wrong. Lizzie has clearly carried old wounds for a long time, and Hector genuinely believes he did the best he could. Molly desperately tries to stop the argument, but the damage is done. The evening ends in heartbreak. Later, Archie gives Katrina a pine cone from the great tree as a keepsake. It's such a simple gift, yet somehow it feels more meaningful than anything expensive. When they say goodbye, neither one can quite bring themselves to say what they truly feel. And that's what makes the moment so sad. The silence between them says more than words ever could. After the argument, Lizzie decides she's leaving. She's had enough. She packs her things and announces she's heading over to Kilwillie's castle. Hector calls it treachery. Then comes one of the episode's most famous lines. Hector dramatically states how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. That quote comes from Shakespeare's King Lear. Trust Hector to respond to family drama with classic literature. Molly, however, has reached her limit. She tells Hector that if he keeps behaving this way, nobody will speak to him. Eventually, Lizzie agrees to stay. But before she goes upstairs, she tells Hector it seems obvious he wants nothing to do with his grandchild. The look on Hector's face tells us that accusation cuts deeper than anything else she has said. Later, Archie finds Lizzie upstairs holding a teddy bear and crying. The scene between brother and sister is lovely. Eventually, the conversation turns to Katrina. Lizzie asks the question we've all been asking. How does Archie feel about her leaving? Archie finally admits what we've known all season. He's lost her, or at least he believes he has. Hector had told Duncan to guard the tree overnight. So we see Duncan down by the tall tree, and he's fighting off a swarm of midges. Eventually, he just gets up and leaves. And the next morning, when he returns to his post, he discovers that someone has chopped the top off of Glen Bogle's precious tree. The horror, the outrage. At breakfast, Hector is already grumbling about the newspaper coverage when Duncan bursts in with the news. Within seconds, everyone is charging out the door. Hector even grabs a shotgun. Meanwhile, over at Kilwillie Estate, they discover that their tree has suffered exactly the same fate. At this point, the two sides become convinced they've been sabotaged by one another. Hector declares war, and the MacDonald army marches out on the moors. Kilwillie's forces march as well. Insults are exchanged. Hector calls Kilwillie a devious little tow rag. Kilwillie calls Hector a scoundrel, and before long they're dueling, one with a sword and one with a walking stick. They're like two overgrown schoolboys who never learned when to stop. When Archie finally breaks it up, Hector dramatically declares their friendship is over. All over a tree. Meanwhile, Lizzie visits Katrina and asks her to be the baby's godmother. It's a sweet moment. Then the conversation turns once again to Archie. Katrina finally admits the truth. She has feelings for him. She always has. But Archie never says anything. And after waiting so long, she's convinced herself she has to move on. Lizzie gently pushes back. She tells Katrina that Archie is absolutely mad about her. And if there was ever a moment when I wanted to jump into the television and assist with communication, this was it. Then Lizzie suddenly realizes her contractions are back. And from the look on her face, this isn't dress rehearsal, it's showtime. Back at Glen Bogle, chaos erupts. Contractions intensify, people rush around, and somehow the person who ends up taking charge is Sean, the taxi driver. It turns out the man has 3 children and knows exactly what he's doing. Who needs a doctor when you've got Sean? Now this is where I want to tell you about a very weird aspect of the episode. Throughout the episode, Molly has told us that she gave birth to all 3 of her children on this beanbag. And this is the worst looking beanbag I've ever seen in my life. I'm convinced they sent the props people out to every secondhand shop in England, or in Scotland, to find the worst looking beanbag on the planet. It has every color under the sun on it, and it just looks like it's been through a war, which I guess if it's been through the birth of 3 children, that is like a war. Anyway, Molly insists that Lizzie's going to give birth on this nasty old beanbag as well. So they bring the beanbag out and put her on it. And Hector and Archie, they're hurrying back toward the house. And Lizzie is in major pain and she's crying out. Hector can't bear to hear it. But then suddenly we hear a baby's cry. And everything changes. Katrina quietly says it's the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. Inside, Hector finally meets his granddaughter. Richard Bryars, who plays Hector, plays this scene beautifully. All the anger disappears, all the hurt fades away, all that remains is love. Hector tells Lizzie he will always love both her and the baby. And just like that, the emotional wall between them begins to crumble. The baby's name is Martha. Martha was Hector's mother's name, and she is adorable. Lizzie names Katrina as godmother and Archie as godfather. The symbolism isn't exactly subtle. Then Katrina leaves. Lizzie immediately points out a practical problem. A godmother living on the other side of the world isn't terribly useful. At last, Archie realizes what he needs to do. And off he goes. He runs and runs and runs some more. Poor Archie practically covers half the Highlands trying to reach the train station. But when he arrives, he's too late. The train is gone. The woman he loves is gone. Or so he thinks. Back at Glen Bogle, everyone comforts him. At least he tried. But Lexi seems quietly pleased that he came back alone. Later, Archie visits Katrina's cottage. There he finds Fergal. And I have to say, Fergal handles this situation with remarkable dignity. He explains that Katrina was upset throughout the train journey, so he went to the buffet car. When he returned, she was gone. Fergal tells Archie he still has plans to go to New Zealand. I feel bad for Fergal and wonder what Katrina has up her sleeve. It can't be much since I already know she leaves the show. Next, we have a scene with Glen and Kilwillie. Glen tells Kilwillie that Archie and Hector had nothing to do with chopping off the top of his tree, that they were at Glen all night. Kilwillie still isn't sure if he believes that, but Glen shows him the proof. On his truck, he has a tarp, and he pulls the tarp aside, and under it are a chainsaw and other equipment used to climb a tree. He's found that the new employee Kilwillie hired is the one responsible for chopping both of their trees. Kilwillie arrives at Glen and explains that he trusted his new employee because he came highly recommended from another estate owner, Tubby McKibber. Instead of more arguments, he offers Hector an apology. And he also admits he's been jealous of Hector's beautiful wife and family. It's a surprisingly vulnerable moment for Kilwillie. The two men shake hands, declare peace, and agree that in the end it was only a tree. Of course, the final joke comes when the competition winner is announced. It's not Hector nor Kilwillie. The winner is Tubby McKibber, the very man who recommended the ghillie responsible for the whole mess. Perfect. The episode closes with a very warm scene. Everyone is gathered beside the loch for Martha's christening. The Highlands are beautiful, the family is together, and for the first time in a long while there is peace. Hector presents the family quaich, a traditional Scottish two-handed drinking cup engraved with the family motto. Glen fills it with water from the loch. Then Hector welcomes little Martha into the family. Take your part on God's green earth. It's a beautiful blessing, simple and heartfelt. As the family stands together by the water, it feels like Glen itself is welcoming a new generation. And that's where we leave Season 2, Episode 7. And now it's time for our Across the Pond translations. At one point, Hector refers to the taxi in his driveway as a hackney carriage. This is an old British term for a vehicle for hire, originally a horse-drawn. We also heard the term bairns, B-A-I-R-N-S, and it's a Scottish word for children or kids. I told you at one point that Duncan was outside fighting a swarm of midges. Those are tiny biting insects found throughout Scotland, small in size and enormous in annoyance. At one point, Hector calls Kilwillie a tow rag. This is a British insult meaning an unpleasant, dishonest, or generally annoying person. At the christening, we had the word quaich, which is actually spelled Q-U-A-I-C-H, and it's a traditional Scottish two-handled drinking cup, often used during ceremonies and celebrations. And our animal sighting this week? Well, we had Monty. He earns his place this week because after the devastating argument between Hector and Lizzie, Monty lets out one enormous mournful whine beside the fireplace. Even the dog seemed exhausted by the family drama. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed the recap, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, or leave a comment. You can reach me at thedenofepisodes@yahoo.com. As always, I'm Marlo Fox, and until next time, keep the kettle on and the episodes rolling.